Gayle King over at CBS using her platform to talk about how the issue, if we want to stop violence, is guns, and they're banning books. Clip 10, play it.
We report these stories and we go on to the next thing, and people are still suffering all these years later. And I keep thinking about those families. We were talking about your kids' rooms are still there with all of their places in it. And I've come to the point, and it's very difficult to even think that we live in a country where apparently we value guns over children. We value guns over the lives of fellow human beings. Guys, they're banning books in schools. Yeah. Books can't kill your children. They're banning some books in schools, but yet the rules are very different when it comes to guns.
They're not
the stupidity here, Buck. It just... So first of all, if you want, we said this in the first hour, and I do think it's worth bringing up again and again. If you want to ban guns, just say it. Own it as your argument and start to advocate for it in the First Amendment marketplace of ideas. You're going to lose, and you're going to lose in a major way. And that's why they don't ever actually say that by and large, although Randy Weingarten, as I said, the idiot teachers union chair, did just come out and say that. So at least she's being honest about that. Now, every time I hear that a book is being banned, I want to pull my hair out. The book is not being banned. If you don't take your kid to an R-rated movie, the R-rated movie is not being banned. Parents are making choices about at what age it is appropriate to expose their kid to certain content. Buck, one of my kids came home recently unable to sleep because he had watched 40 minutes of this movie Smile, which evidently is really terrifying. I haven't seen it. I bet almost every single person listening to us right now remember seeing at some point a scary movie that you might have been too young to have seen.
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Raise your hand even if you're driving around in the car right now. If you didn't listen to mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, whoever was in charge, and you snuck your way to watching a movie that was too scary and that you were too young to have watched. I remember still those Friday the 13th, those Nightmare on Elm Street movies, they are they're like cotton candy for kids, right? You can't not try to watch them, but you know at the same time, it's going to be hard to sleep when it's dark in your bedroom after you watch those movies. So most of the time, parents spend a lot of their parenting effort to make sure that the age at which you are exposed to content is appropriate. And so this idea, Buck, of banning guns, it's not going to go anywhere. You're legitimately going to go start pulling up to people's homes and try and take their guns away? It's crazy talk. And simultaneously, this idea that they're trying to tie to books and whether the books are appropriate to be in the library. I'll give you an example. When I started, you're much younger than me. Totally
True.
Different generation.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember when the internet came to school. For those of you out there who remember when suddenly you might not have had the internet at home. We didn't really have the internet much at my house when I was in high school. But we had it at school. And do you know what one of the first things that teenage boys in my school tried to do when they got on the internet, Buck?
I have a feeling I might probably be able to guess.
Probably have a good guess as to what they were trying to look at. Teenage boys on the internet. We were not allowed. It was a huge scandal in the school. You're not allowed to try and look up porn on the internet. We got to put filters on the internet. Nobody came running around saying, oh my goodness, they're trying to ban the internet in the school. No, they're banning pornography on school computers.
My school, the dean banned Maxim magazine, which when I was a kid, I remember a youth, Maxim magazine was amazing. If you got caught with a Maxim, detention. Now, that wasn't banning Maxim from life.
Correct.
You weren't going to prison for having a Maxim magazine on your person, but the school said that's not appropriate for the school day and for our hallways. And it was a pretty serious Jesuit institution, and so that's how it went. But so they keep saying this line about the banning of books. It is a lie. It is a lie. It is propaganda. But I would just note that while, so they're all focused on this, and they want to talk about assault rifles. They want to talk about semi-automatic. And by the way, I know people get so mad we use this term. They have managed to codify now in a number of places. Assault rifle is a thing that exists in like the New York State, for example, in the New York State Criminal Code or Code of regulating firearms. So they've created it now. It does exist as a term. I know that it's to a lot of people a meaningless term because it's a semi-automatic rifle with certain cosmetic characteristics. But meanwhile, I just think it's interesting. If it's really to stop gun violence, why not focus on where the gun violence is happening and focus on putting the police resources in communities where there's too much gun violence? I bring us back to Washington, D.C. I just think this is a fascinating example. The same way San Francisco shows you what you get if you just go completely left and you allow people to camp on the streets and do drugs in open air and don't enforce the laws about a whole range of petty crimes. You just get decay, disorder, and everyone who goes there now admits this. Same thing in Portland, same thing in Seattle. You're having something different in D.C., and right now, similar but different. There's a story up, again, go to NPR, and this is from a year ago, that the city commissioned a study that there are 500 people. D.C. city proper has maybe 600,000 or 700,000 residents. That calls 600,000 residents, right? 500 people are responsible for 70% of the gun violence.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So here's this crazy idea to keep 600,000 D.C. residents safer, including 300,000 black residents of D.C. and all the rest of the residents of D.C. to keep everybody safer. And remember, the black community is disproportionately affected by the gun violence, and that most of the victims of the gun violence are black. Arrest the 500 or so perpetrators and lock them up.
Yep.
Keep them off the streets. This is, by the way, they had a similar statistic in New York, except it was, because it's a much bigger city. I forget, Bill Barr wrote this editorial in the Wall Street Journal. He was like, look, there's like a couple thousand people in New York City who do all the bad violence. All of it.
Yeah.
Basically. Lock them up and your crime rate goes away forever. And they keep saying, oh, well, we will. Yeah, you lock them up on, crime number 50. And that's when you catch them.
And Buck, it's a tiny number of people in a tiny number of neighborhoods by and large. We know not only who the people are, we know where they're likely to commit their crimes. That's one of the legacies of the 1990s war on crime. And we just forgot all the lessons of that era. And now we're right back where we were in the 1980s as we were running up to those all-time highs in the early 90s in violent crime.
We know the status here, the situation is clear, and it really is about, if they want to talk to us about gun violence and saving lives, let's deal with how we can actually save lives, and that is to enforce the law in urban centers across the country in a way that keeps dangerous people off the streets. I also think we haven't even gotten to this, but in the context of even a mass shooting situation, you have to keep people who, there has to be, we talk about mental health, people who are saying and plotting out possibly very dangerous things. It has to be easier to commit people involuntarily, which has been a thing that's gone away really for the last 30 or so years. But that's a whole other conversation. We'll get back to that.